So hello and welcome to this second, which I think is going to be a really juicy conversation on Sedna today. Since last week, I just had this huge kind of download of inspiration, clarity about Sedna, about myself as someone who has really broken the chains of karma, or is breaking the chains in my family, and also my relationship with dogs. So I wanted to kind of begin sharing a bit of my own story and then invite you to share your story. But we just actually discovered as we were coming on the call that Sedna's traveling extremely slowly. If you remember from last week, we talked about she's got something like 11,390 year orbit. And, Pluto is in the 230, I think. So we're talking about a massive leap of consciousness across this kind of time and space that Sedna represents. But she's moving very, very slowly. So what we just kind of discovered, actually, as we were talking, is that quite a lot of the time that we've all been alive, she has been making her way through the codon ring of life and death, which to me is like so exciting, because if Sedna is about anything, it's about these like life and death issues. So the codon ring of life and death has the 3, the 20, the 23, the 24, the 27, and the 42. So yeah, if you can post which gene key your Sedna is in, we can kind of see who has it where. If you weren't here earlier, you can find this out at Tarako.io. I've just put I put Tarka, sorry, Taraka.io. And if you open your natal chart and scroll all the way down to the bottom, you'll find the list of trans-Neptunian objects towards the bottom there. And so we talked last week as well about this big shift that's going to happen when next year Pluto's going to move into Aquarius in March, and then Sedna will move into Gemini in the middle of the year, like in the summertime. And when she's at 7 minutes into Gemini, she'll shift from Gene Key 8 into Gene Key 20. So it's interesting that Gene Key 20 is that final one in the codon ring of life and death. And that feels like, it does feel like the 8 is this intense, like, popping us out of mediocrity and all the social programming that's kind of dulled us down. And on the other side, we have the 14, which is the shadow of compromise. Compromise and mediocrity. Don't those two words just like describe our world, under the kind of influence of the media, the tabloid media and that kind of thing. And the whole kind of education system, it feels like everything in life is trying to homogenize us. And these gene keys are saying, no, let your individuality shine, live your truth. And so Sedna's been in the 8 for quite a long time. But it feels like the 20 is going to be almost like we have achieved peace for those who have popped out of the social programming. It's going to be, the presence is going to be really powerful when she hits that point. Okay, so there's 2 bits of story I want to share today. One is about my personal experience with dogs and how they kind of took over as the beings that I bonded with in childhood and through my life, really. And then the other one, I've just watched the Meghan and Harry documentary. And I want to talk about Sedna as the kind of chain breaker in the family. If you are here, you are likely the chain breaker in your family. There might be more than one, you know, in your family and in different ways. And I think there's different experiences of that. You know, you could be the person who's literally pushed out of your family for being the one who is speaking a different truth, who can maybe see the corruptions in the family line, you know, who breaks free, and you're the one who's thrown under the bus, or, you're scapegoated. But I think there's other experiences as well. Like, I think we can probably learn to communicate in ways. It's interesting that the 27, a lot of us have a Sedna in the 27, which is selfless communication. So when we kind of can transcend the painful vulnerability and move into, we're here to share a message for humanity, and we do that in a kind of in a more smooth way, maybe, or from a higher frequency, I think we can change the dynamic. I'm interested to hear your experience of whether you have been able to do that at times. And then there's people who seem to be chain breakers, but they get on quite well with their family. It's like they're in a whole family of chain breakers or something like that. So, I don't think every person challenging family karma has this really extreme Sedna experience, which is literally to be thrown out of the boat and have your fingers chopped off. So it feels like it's quite an extreme thing. Okay, so Sedna, the myth of Sedna, and there's a number of myths. So, she's from the Inuit tribe, but there's not just one Inuit tribe in one place. If you imagine like Native Americans, there are lots of different tribes and they're living in different locations. They might have different animals around them. They might have different cultural ways. So the myth varies from tribe to tribe. So you will find different variations. But the relationship with dogs, I've come across in almost everyone I've seen, that Sedna loved her dogs and she liked to go hunting on the ice floes and that with her dogs. And it's quite unusual, of course, for a female to be a hunter. So we can think of like a similar, a similar archetype maybe as Diana or Artemis in being the huntress. And that kind of very independent, kind of androgynous feel about her when she's young. And the dogs play a kind of role of eating the father in one of the myths. At the end of the thing, the dogs eat the father. And so the dogs are part of some kind of devouring that happens. And I'm almost feeling that as the devouring of the corruption and the karma. So I don't know for sure that was the meaning, but that's kind of how I feel it in this moment in time. So my own story with dogs is quite interesting, because I was born at home in Johannesburg in 1970. And we had a dog. My parents had a dog called Bess, who was a black Labrador. And so, excuse me, I've got such a cough. My dad buried the afterbirth in the garden, and Beth dug it up and ate it. And she kind of then, from then on, I think she thought I was her baby. And she would lie underneath my cot. I was in the garden underneath the trees, as many babies were kind of left in those days. Someone pointed out I was lucky to be left under apple and plum trees with the sky, and this very protective dog who basically snarled at anyone who wasn't my parents, wouldn't let anyone come near me. And there's also that whole kind of myth of the black dog in the underworld. And, you know, with my 47 life work, I felt the significance of the black dog as like a guardian to the underworld, in that kind of mythical life story. So dogs have followed me. Always had a lot of dogs when I was a child. I played a lot with the dogs, and I remember as an adult, for a long time I couldn't get a dog because of work hours and where I was living. And eventually I moved to a place where I could get a dog. And I got this 10-year-old Jack Russell called Tiny from the RSPCA. And I absolutely adored this dog. You know, we just like bonded so closely. And then she suddenly died a week before Connor, my adopted son, came to live with us. And the message I got at the time is that she had to die. She had to leave so that I would bond with Connor. Like, as long as there was a dog there, I wouldn't bond with him, basically. I wouldn't try as hard to bond with him. And I kind of realized at that point, like, how much dogs especially, but I was also into horses and as well as a child, how much they'd kind of replaced the humans in my world. So my big love, give and take, was actually happening with dogs more than it was with humans. And part of this whole Walk in Beauty book I wrote, and that whole year of noticing beauties, it took me about 6 months walking around to first notice the beauty of a human. And I realized as well, like, how cut off I was from seeing the beauty of humans. And so one thing that's really happened for me the last 4 years is I've become much more human friendly. Like, I really love humans now. I used to like either be afraid of them or I didn't like them. Whereas now I'm like, pretty much, you know, I don't love everyone, but I love quite a lot of people. I love all you guys for sure. So that kind of human love started to flow. It felt like a big healing, actually, that human connection coming back. But dogs sustained me all that time, and they still do. You know, when I'm lonely, who I look to is my dogs, to kind of connect with. Okay, so that's my dog story, and hopefully you will have some dog or mammal stories to share, maybe of that, or just reflections on, you know, if you were the chain breaker in your family, how did you cope with the inevitable loneliness and isolation of that situation? You know, I felt dogs were my go-to, but, you know, maybe you didn't have a dog, or, you know, maybe some other way of coping went into action. And then kind of interconnected is, yeah, I don't know how many of you have seen the Harry and Meghan documentary, and I think, you know, it's really interesting to look at it from the point of view of Sedna as this person who really challenges the family values, the family norms. They break taboos, you know, and so Meghan has so many taboos. She's mixed race, she's married, she was an actress. So in the documentary, she talks about how, you know, the British establishment, the British public had so many issues with all these things. She was just, you know, breaking the taboos without even opening her mouth. And actually, she was really trying to fit in. You know, she was wearing like beige and camel for a whole year or something. So she wouldn't like stand out too much. But even though she was really trying to fit in, it's like her energy field, and Harry's as well, is just creating this, you know, they have to stand in their truth, and they have to kind of, this is their karma to go down this road. And wow, you know, it's like, so must be so hard for them, because they really have been thrown under the bus. And it's interesting, like thinking about it, because the big person who betrays Sedna is her father. You know, it's her father who throws her off the boat and then chops her fingers off when she tries to cling on. And both Meghan and Harry, you know, their fathers have kind of, they won't listen, you know, they won't say, oh, okay, this is your experience or anything like that. You know, it's like, we don't want anything to do with you now. You've broken the rules, basically. And people get really emotional about this. Eve and I were talking in the week, and both our parents hate, especially Meghan, but, you know, Harry's kind of a victim of Meghan in their view. And but it's like a real strong hatred, and so it evokes a lot of passion in people. And it's interesting because what my dad will say is she's a trouble causer. This is what they don't like, you know, she's come along and she's disrupted our perfectly wonderful royal family. How dare she, you know? And this is what Sedna did. She interrupted her family, her culture, you know. And you can imagine, like, for the Inuits, that have pretty strict rules because they would be living at the edge of survival in a very cold climate. And so the rules around marriage, around who you married, you know, how you behaved, they were probably all very rigid rules, in the same way the royal family has very rigid rules about what you can and can't do. Anyway, I'm going to finish there with those are the insights that have come this week. And oh, and just one thing to say, I feel like there's a whole message through the 27 of selfless communication. I just want to like say that again, because, you know, being selfless is maybe not what we think it is at all. You know, being selfless doesn't mean you fit in necessarily and you don't speak your mind. Sometimes the selfless thing for humanity is to be the one who says no to whatever the problematic, you know, behavior is, whether it's racism or whatever. You know, to say no to that is actually selfless when you know that you're going to get, you know, you're not going to be popular for this point of view necessarily, but, you know, you feel compelled to say it and share it anyway. Okay, so I'm going to mute now and hand over to whoever would like to speak. Please let me know in the chat or just say if you want me to. It is going on YouTube, so it will be public. So just to let you know that when you're making your decision on whether you want to be muted or not.
I'm just going to chime in on the Harry and Meghan. For me, it seems like the 1 and the 14 are really prominent in how your parents believe and think that this is wrong for her to be in that position, and to expose maybe the traditions, because it's mediocre traditions, right, that make them unique, because they're a step away from something else. And so us down on this lower level perceive maybe a higher calling or a higher position for the royals, but the reality is we're all just human beings, like, you know, we're all on an equal level, and then our own uniqueness can come out, as Meghan has done, by showing not just who she is, but by conforming. She compromised, right? She's compromised herself for a year with her clothing, with her personality, with her lifestyle, as did he. They kind of hid behind the scenes for an awful lot in order to spend time together. So yeah, I can see how the 1 and 14, that codon ring, really is playing out a very nice role with regards to Sedna and her story. Chain breaking. So yeah, thank you.
I'll share a few things that came this week that led me to Artemis. A few gifts. I ordered some crystals for the help of depression, and I was making a bracelet for my sister for her depression for Christmas. And the box came. It was a beautiful box. The way the person that sent me the beads to make. And inside was a charm, and it said, "This is a special gift for you." And it was the Tree of Life charm. Well, here this the Tree of Life charm came up, and it was a tree. So then I went to our art Christmas exchange party, and we all exchanged an art gift. And it was, you pick a gift when it's your number. So I picked the box that had deer on it, because of course the deer, it was a beautiful box. I opened it, and they were these handmade coasters that I absolutely been admiring in our art gallery, and they're made of cedar. Well, cedar is the cypress tree. So I went to look up the cypress tree, and the goddess associated with the cypress tree is Artemis. So that would be Sedna. Diana, which is the protection of animals, wild animals, and sacred to the daughter of Zeus. Okay, so anyway, the hunting dog and the deer. Here the box was deer paper. Inside was the cedar. I felt like a unicorn opening a box. Of course, I'm like so elated, you know, that there were 10 packages there. I was 6 to pick a package, you know, and I get this package. Of course, it was all divinely guided. Anyway, so the other thing is, I read where the cypress tree is the tree of life. And the other thing that happened this month on our wall in the art gallery is our famous Flagler Pier is going to be destroyed and taken down. So we have a ceremony, we're having a tribute to it. And someone painted Starry, Starry Nights, because our pier was decorated every Christmas for Starry, Starry Nights. It was all blue lights with big white stars, but this year we couldn't do it because of the hurricane and what it done to it. Anyway, the painting of Vincent van Gogh is a cypress tree in his painting. This has all led to me just from getting this gift, and I wrote all this. That's why I ran to get my tablet. Anyway, the cypress tree is healing, uprightness, it's eternal life, it's the death of the ego, so we can prevail the shamanic death. Starry, Starry Nights is a black cypress tree that Vincent van Gogh drew in the painting because of his depression, and he painted that, I guess, before he went into the institute at that time, with, you know, so it's about his depressed mental state. So it's the cycle of life and death. He also painted wheat fields in Cyprus all the time, a lot in his paintings. So the cypress trees are planted in cemeteries, a lot of cemeteries, and they ward off evil spirits. So that's what I was guided to with through two gifts that came mysteriously to me and led me to the cypress tree, which led me back to Artemis again, my rocket that went to space with an astronaut who's owned by a professor. But anyway, oh yeah, it just comes around in circles surprisingly. So I just wanted to share that. And I don't know which gene key my Sedna is at this point. So
I just wrote it in the chat, Pat. I looked it up for you. You're actually the 42 line 3. So that would have been like the 42 would be in the codon ring of life and death.
okay.
There was one before that, but it's interesting, like we would all be in that codon ring of life and death as a soul group together. I mean, that's like a really big idea in itself, that we have been in that all our lives, you know.
Okay. Yes, I see that. And it's the hexagram 42, letting go of living and dying is the name of the sacred hexagram. It's, yeah. Okay. Thank you.
I can share. It's so interesting, Alison, that you brought in the dog, because obviously the dog in the dream mark is associated with the 37. And as I was doing the biofield tuning today for our art group in my class, I really felt the presence of the 37. And it's talking about that equality, which I think, Cynthia, you really touched in on, about, you know, there's no special, you know, everyone's an individual, and we put these people on these, we've created equality with having these institutions that has really kind of unbalanced the world so greatly. But it's interesting you bring up a dog, because, you know, for me personally, I mean, I like animals, you know, don't misunderstand me, but I've always been slightly envious of like humans that have like a real strong bond with the animal world. I remember as a child, I so desperately wanted a dog. And and my mum was so against dogs. She was like, no dogs. She was a cat lover. But, you know, when you think about it, cats are kind of come from the spirit world, whereas dog is human's best friend. There's something unique about that relationship. And I think it's a bridge for people that struggle having that intimacy with humans. Because, you know, there I was, this small child, projector child, in guiding my family, saying we need a dog, you know, we really need a dog. So I get a dog, and of course the dog becomes my mother's greatest love. And this was a woman that has literally closed her heart to humanity. You know, she lives in a world, she hates Harry, she hates Meghan. I mean, she's like, I struggle to even, I'm like, I look at this woman and go, really? Like, why would you hate someone that you've never met? Like, but anyway, the British tabloids are very good at keeping the British public, and probably a lot of the rest of the world, you know, in a really shadow state. But nonetheless, you know, I brought a dog into my life, into my family, into my mother's life, and I have seen that woman absolutely like open because of dogs. Like, that dog passed away, and she immediately replaced them with two little puppies. And the two that, you know, my mum and those two dogs have been on one hell of a journey. I don't think, I mean, you know, when they both passed on, the grief, those tears that my mother could just not awaken through with her relationship with me or with my dad or with any other human, I tell you, something burst open with those dogs. And I was almost looking back, as I'm reflecting now, like almost there was probably a little bit of resentment, actually, because I suspect, you know, being her daughter, it's like I really saw how she could love that dog more than she could love me. So it's, you know, but actually, you know, working with the Gene Keys and, you know, opening up my levels of awareness, I really started to really honor her relationship with her animals and how powerful they've been in her own kind of the opening of her heart, really. And, you know, I looked up the 37, you know, in Rosie's book, and it says, you know, there's like a one-liner from the Gene Keys book, and it says, from the point of view of the human heart, all humanity is one family. So it really is tuning into that. I think the dogs, you know, the animals, they're a bridge, because we've hurt each other, you know, through the eons that we've, you know, lived in human form. We've hurt each other so much, and we've closed our hearts off to each other so deeply. And it's the animals, you know, it's the animals that are kind of healing some of those wounds. So grateful to our furry friends. I know my husband too took a lot of refuge in his dog. And we were even commenting on it the other day, like, I think what sanctity she brought him as a child too, because he too was his own Sedna in his own family, by marrying me, the white girl. And, you know, we did, you know, anyway, I won't go into it, but yeah, it was such a lovely how you brought that in, Alison. I really like, it was really great self-reflection for me as I speak these words, so thank you.
Yeah, I think that's another theme with Sedna, because she doesn't marry someone within her own tribal network. She marries someone exotic from afar, and that marriage doesn't work out. But I think it's interesting that that's the person she chose. She didn't want to conform. She didn't want to marry. She wasn't attracted to marry someone of her own type, if you like. And so I think we can, you know, consider people in mixed marriages of all kinds, religion, race, whatever, that they are, you know, they have the Sedna archetype where they just feel restricted by their own family and culture. You know, they need to have something more than that. They want to experience the exoticness of the other. And it's kind of the way that we have become globalized, if we think about it, through those kind of marriages. And yeah, and the year after Sedna was discovered, like YouTube and Facebook came online. So I think Sedna she's about this global matrix. She's globalizing us basically. And that can be a process that's homogenizing as well. But I love the idea of globalization, but everyone keeps their unique culture and they celebrate it, and their music and art and clothes and whatever. So rather than us all being one mush of humanity, we actually are in this exquisiteness and you know, the 14:8 individuality of the tribes as well. I like that vision.
I'll share, but I'd like you to stop the recording, please.
So to everyone watching on YouTube, thank you. And to say you can come along and join these very juicy, amazing conversations. They feel very Sedna-like because it feels like we're going deeper and deeper into subjects on sexuality and culture and how we support each other in all of that, in the way that we are changing the world. And I do believe we're changing the world. I really do. And as we come together, we'll become more powerful in that. So yeah, come along and join Soul Tribe if you want to be part of the conversation. And I'll put the link below the video. Yeah, and thanks to everyone who came today. And it's really interesting to kind of perceive a soul group of, you know, being in that 27-3-42, and all the others we have, the codon ring of life and death. It's like, wow, we're creating something amazing here. So, and I might do Hecate soon. She's actually an asteroid, and she'd be quite a good one this time of year. So yeah, okay, well, bye everyone. Have a wonderful week. Bye.